workshop that is entitled Reimagining International Law Research, Intersectional Approaches and Storytelling. So I'm very happy to welcome you to this workshop. So today's workshop is going to be first a bit theoretical, giving you a bit of background on what are these two methodologies, and then we are going to give you the floor and it's going to be mainly interactive. So just to have a bit a tone of the room, like whoever heard of one of those two methodologies, maybe you can just have a raise of hands of whoever heard intersectionality or storytelling. Never? Okay, a couple. Okay, great. So here's going to be the agenda of the workshop. We're going to have a small introduction on who is United Rising, which is us, the organization, let's say, participating to this workshop. Then I'm going to give you a bit of a theoretical background on what is actually intersectionality and storytelling. We are going to we're going to then delve into the role of storytelling in international law and give the floors to our experts that are here today. And then we're actually going to test your skills and work on a case scenario together with the experts acting as facilitators for this workshop. And then we're just going to have a small closing discussion on what did you learn in this workshop. So let's start with United Rising. United Rising is an organization that was founded approximately 1.5 years ago, and it's an organization that is committed in safeguarding both the planets and its stewards. So what we do is that we try to advocate for rights of humans and nature from a holistic point of view and also an interdisciplinary point of view. So approximately also 1 year ago, we created two initiatives that intersect with each other. And this is the Intersectional campaign that we started and then that we complemented with this other initiative, which is a storytelling initiative. And they're really important because they help us to tackle social and environmental challenges from a more holistic point of view and also adding more depth and inclusivity to our research. And we realized that these two methodologies are also very important to add more depth and inclusivity also in international law research. Both of these approaches are really important because they challenge also the traditional framework of doing research, because sometimes it overlooks in our traditional way of doing research a bit the complexity and the depth that some systematic inequalities have. So let's go to intersectionality. So intersectionality is a theoretical framework that was developed by the legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw. To make it simple, it examines how various identities, such as, for instance, race, gender, class, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and ability, intersect and expose individuals to different layers of privilege or oppression. And this lens is very important because it makes us understand that injustices are not experienced in isolation from these identities. And what I can give as a very simple example is, for instance, a woman of color that lives in a certain context might not live the same level of discrimination of a white woman or a man of color, because she's exposed to two social identities, which is her gender and her race. So, in the context of international law, what we understand is that intersectionality is a very important approach to recognize that challenges and issues are really complex and multi-faced, and they need to be tackled as such. And if we don't do that, we cannot see what is the root cause of certain systematic injustices. And this is also very important because it helps us to provide a more clear foundation on how can we craft law and policies that allow us to reach equitable standards for everybody and not just for one segment of the globe. It's also very important because it helps to bridge gaps when it comes to representation, especially when it comes to giving the floor to voices that have been historically oppressed and also excluded by research. So, storytelling. Storytelling is actually a tool to uphold an intersectional lens. And it really helps us to humanize complex legal issues by also identifying the root cause of certain injustices, such as, for instance, racism or colonialism. It's also very important, and it's a very important methodology and approach of tackling research, because it creates really a space for co-creation, because storytelling is also a tradition and a practice that is rooted in indigenous culture, as they use it to preserve their history, their identity, to explain also their historical trauma from some systems of oppression, and therefore it gives a fair ground to have indigenous people participate truly to research. It's also, as I already said, a very important tool in international law to tackle power dynamics and dominant narratives, which are the root cause of systematic injustices, which still nowadays, if we don't tackle them, will keep reinforcing legal frameworks that are not equal and, let's say, that don't let us achieve equality and real inclusivity. Once again, as I said, for intersectionality, it's also an amazing tool to really make sure that indigenous have a true agency, not only theoretically, but in practice when it comes to decision making. And this is also a very important tool in international law to enrich legal and policy discussions. So this is a bit of the basis of these two methodologies. I hope that you were able to grasp a bit the essence of why are they so important. I will now give the floor to our intern of United Rising, Zofia, which is also a student here at The Hague, and she will explain a bit more about her experience of using these two methodologies also in her work.
So within the intersectionality and storytelling approaches, we have been focusing on highlighting the role of narratives in amplifying indigenous voices, voices that are too often misrepresented. Our goal is to create and provide a platform where these indigenous communities can share their experiences, share their culture and their traditions authentically, truly as they are. Traditional international law can a lot of the times be too rigid and exclude these indigenous voices and create systematic imbalances. We believe that by integrating storytelling into advocacy and decision making, we can create a more equitable approach and address these gaps. Storytelling can take a lot of different approaches, a lot of different methods, such as music, poems, rituals, and different tales. By integrating these approaches, we not only honor these cultural traditions, but we also promote these perspectives into advocacy and decision making. We believe that by applying this intersectional methodology in our career, we can create a more thorough research by using more approaches. From my personal experience being an intern at United Rising, I was lucky enough to familiarize myself with so many different fields of laws that I had none or very limited knowledge of, as well as legal frameworks that I did not know about. But most importantly, I was introduced to a new lens through which I can conduct my own research. With these methodologies, I believe my view on international law has changed in a positive way. We also believe that by using these methodologies, such as storytelling, we can create a lot more unique, outstanding, and special work in our academic career and later on as well. Personally, working on this project, Intersectionality and Storytelling, it has transferred my view on storytelling in itself, and now I see it a lot more than just a regular narrative. I see it as a tool with which international law can be changed, and a lot more voices can be heard. An aspect that actually caught my attention really well is historical trauma and how it can affect indigenous communities. Colonization tore numerous communities and families apart, destroying their identities and their families and their traditions. Despite being disproportionately affected, they are still underrepresented in international decision-making due to the rigid academic and institutional methods that fail to create a space for them. And we believe that storytelling can bridge this gap. At United Rising, we see storytelling as a way to influence international law. Through the lived experiences of these indigenous communities, we hope to shift perspectives in legal systems and promote intersectional justice.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. Well, now I will give the floor to our experts that will actually explain you a bit more on how did they use these two methodologies within their work. They will explain you a bit more about their legal background and their experiences. So I will first invite Fajar on the floor. Yes, here.
So, thank you, Jasmine, for organizing this workshop, very important workshop. Let me just introduce myself a little bit more. I think when you tell stories, it's important to know a bit more about your background. So, I was born and raised here in the Netherlands. My mother is Dutch and my father is from Papua. My father came here in the Netherlands in 1962, due to the fact that at that time, the Netherlands, as colonial administrator of West Papua. You can see here West Papua here on the map. I think for our Philippine participants it's very clear, but I'm not sure if it's clear for other participants today. West Papua is situated just above Australia, near Indonesia, and for centuries or for decades it was under the colonial administration of the Netherlands, and after World War II, when colonial boundaries were changed, it was handed over to Indonesia. So there's a lot of history about that, and we'll talk about that later on. But the fact was that my father was forced to come to the Netherlands as a political exile. So from that time I was of course raised by my father, and I was taking over the torch because of the fact that from that moment on Indonesia acted as a second colonial oppressor of West Papua. Until today, human rights violations are still going on, there is at this very moment there is a humanitarian crisis going on in West Papua. The indigenous peoples are evicted from their land because of the fact that there are rich natural resources like palm oil, minerals, gold and copper, oil and gas. In fact, the largest gold, the second largest gold mine of the world is situated in West Papua. So from Papuan people, it's very important to share the stories, but because most of even here in the Netherlands, the story of the situation right now in Papua is unknown. So we have to break the silence. I have been advocating, I've been studying international law here in Leiden. I've been searching all kinds of legal avenues, exploring them in order to advocate for the indigenous Papuan people, but it's very hard. International law fails Papuan people. So it's very important to break the silence. That is the reason that we organized in June this year a Permanent People's Tribunal. This Permanent People's Tribunal is a way to give voice to indigenous Papuan people. So over 2.5 days we have heard testimonies of witnesses experiencing human rights violations. People that have been evicted from their land because of the fact there are huge palm oil plantations in Papua, which destroys the rainforest, the tropical rainforest in Papua. Indigenous Papuan people have also a specific bond with their land. They feel the land as as family. They feel like the people that live around the gold mine, the Amome people and the Comoro people, they feel like their mountain is sacred. The mountain itself is the body, the rivers that flow from the mountain, sources. They feel that there are the arms of the mountain, and they feel like the mountain, the Grasberg mountain, is sacred, and it's been destroyed tremendously. You can see its crater from the moon, and the sediments the toxic sediments, they cause deforestation, and so the people are suffering tremendously under the exploitation of their lands, of their ancestral lands. So these testimonies that were given before a tribunal, panel of judges, experts, seven expert judges, led to the conclusion of that panel of judges that there is a link between state violence and the environmental violence. There is a really close link and clear link between that. And that is also recognized by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. In its report of February this year, it is stated that there's a clear link between colonialism and ecocide. And ecocide, maybe I should explain that for here. Ecocide is the vast destruction of environment caused by companies or by exploitation of states. So and this clear link, I think we need to share through this kind of tribunals with the world as well. And like Jasmine already told, it's also important to give voice to indigenous people all around the world, because indigenous communities all around the world experience the same problems. They experience the fact that their ancestral land is exploited by companies, and most of the time, even when the state like Indonesia has signed the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and is obliged to give a free, prior, and informed consent to the indigenous peoples. Most of the time, those rights are ignored or manipulated by companies, by the fact that the companies work closely with the government. So it's very important that indigenous peoples are also giving a seat at the table and will be involved in the decision making. So now luckily that's also been recognized at the COP16 this year with the UN Biodiversity. They have now a subsidiary organ that involves also indigenous peoples in the decision making. But I think it's a small step, and I think it's indigenous peoples around the world should be involved more equally in decision making, and that makes also why, and that's the reason why I think that maybe we should need more new systems to fight also the systemic injustice, systemic discrimination, and and to see that we can all have this more environmental justice around the world as well. So maybe I should leave it here, and we can discuss this further on in case. Yeah.
It's all right. So good afternoon. It is on now, I think, yes?
Can you put it closer?
Closer?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Right.
closer than that.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, also on my behalf. I see a few students here. They know me all too well, but we also have guests from outside the university, so I shall introduce myself briefly. My name is Sylvia Tomar. I'm lecturing international law here at the Hague University of Applied Sciences. I also conduct research within the research group called Human Studies in Peace and Justice. My research is mainly focusing on gender-based violence and mainly sexual violence which is committed against indigenous women, and the connection of this type of violence and land grabbing, how this type of violence is being used as a method of land grabbing to disrupt communities and make the land available for extraction practices. When I was first confronted or exposed to storytelling as such was in 2016, when I had the honor to spend 1 month in Papua New Guinea, not in West Papua itself, so on the other side of that beautiful straight line border, staying in the refugee community and the refugee settlement with a group of Papuans who have fled from the Indonesian side. I went there to, not strictly speaking, conduct research, rather than to learn and collect stories and hear their experiences, without knowing that anything like storytelling as such exists. So what I have learned most from this experience is what I already knew somewhere, but this has confirmed it beyond any doubt to me, is that international law is an imperialist project. It has always been and it has never changed as such. Imperialism dominates, dictates to us how we think about knowledge, what we think about how knowledge should be generated or created, and it does that through subjugating any other forms of knowledge systems or any other forms of understanding how we understand the world. So what I find very important to why to have this workshop or this discussion today about intersectionality and storytelling, because to me it represents the essence of how decolonization or the change of this imperialist project should take place. Because the bigger question we have to ask ourselves is, what is the role of research and education other than to further or to humiliate or to declare disposable other knowledge systems or other ways of knowing? So is there actually what we could call a progressive project of research? Can we find ways where we reframe our research agendas and we recognize the knowledge which exists in marginalized communities in particular? And we start taking seriously the expertise of those who know most intimately injustice. So I think this is our opportunity and this is our time to open our doors and recognize that knowledge and expertise does not sit in the academia. And we have to open our doors and create contact zones of expertise, so to say, and start collecting stories and other experiences which are different from the mainstream story that is presented to us through international books and international research. So, yeah, trying to keep track of my notes, but it's not too easy, especially without my glasses. An important element there, I think, is that for those of us not from a native community or not from a marginalized community, is how do we think about what is ethically progressive research? How do we think about what is the role of the research? How does it shape our ideas about how knowledge is generated, created, made, understood, and how do we reproduce it through education and give it to the next generation? So, because research and education has been and continues to be deeply implicated in various forms of colonialism. By now we have the concepts of neocolonialism, green colonialism. Those are all new forms of oppression and dispossession. So research and education is an institution of power, and we must avoid the misuse of that power. Yeah, that's where my notes are ending. So I think we can open the floor for discussion or
Thank you so much, both. It was really enriching. Yeah, thank you for your insights. It was really amazing. So now we will start the practical part. So get ready to interact with each other. Well, we already talked quite a bit about West Papua, but I think it would be good for me to reiterate a bit what is happening, because you guys are going to work on this key question, which is, how do you think, based on the knowledge that you received today, that intersectionality and storytelling can serve as effective tools in international law research to address the multi-phase crisis in West Papua? So I will read this for you so it's easier, and then we will split into groups and you guys will work and brainstorm together with the facilitators. So, well, as it was already mentioned, West Papua is situated on the western half of New Guinea, and it was originally a Dutch colony, and since its controversial occupation by Indonesia in 1963, the region has endured prolonged military occupation and widespread human rights abuses. Indigenous Papuan continue to struggle for their right to self-determination, facing what experts have termed as slow-motion genocide, characterized by both cultural erasure and physical displacement over the past 60 years. The crisis has intensified by land dispossession, systematic violence, and severe degradation due to resource exploitation, notably mining, logging, and rapid expansion of palm oil plantations. Indigenous communities are frequently displaced, with many forced into refugees or internally displaced. Yes, internally displaced person camps, while poverty and limited access to healthcare are pervasive issues. Efforts by Papuan to give voice or preserve their cultural identity are often met with violent suppression, and the Indonesian government restricts access to many human rights organizations, leaving many abuses unchecked and isolating the indigenous population further from global support. So I hope you got a good idea of what is happening in this region. So now the purpose is that we're gonna try to split into groups, so one here and one there, and you will be guided with your facilitators to explore this big question. Of course, we're not expecting you guys to know everything about the region, but the idea is that to interact. It's gonna be approximately 30 minutes. I already want to say something important to avoid to lose time. There will be one spokesperson for each group, so decide whether you want to do it before or after you would speak. Okay, so how many are we? That's good. 8 people? 13, okay. 6.
Just clarification.
Yes.
Are there questions or what will we specifically do with the activity after?
The activity is more like an open discussion on what did you understand also from, what's going on in the region, and how do you think that having this intersectional approach and storytelling can serve to tackle the crisis in West Papua. So feel free also to ask questions to the facilitators, maybe they can give you a bit more details about what's going on.
We also formulate questions for the group to discuss
Of course.
Yes,
with regard to intersectionality and storytelling.
of course, you can do this. Yes, so I would say 6 approximately.
This is our group. Please take notes.
Maybe you don't want to go split, so you have one here, one there. You can get different perspectives.
So there were 2 groups now.
Yes.
There were 2 groups, yeah.
Would you like to join the other group so we have a bit more variety?
Yeah.
So that there
So
will
we
be
have some
Filipino
exactly.
regional expertise.
I'd love to hear about your experience. Please come join me if you want, if you wish.
Are you join there? One here, one there.
I just have to check something for the mic.
But we will not do that.
Two more, please.
Actually, sorry.
Yeah, but
Okay, I will take care of the camera.
yeah, okay, sure.
One more.
One more person.
Just for context, I'm actually part of the Metrorising, so I'll be also helping with any note-taking or questions that you might have, but Mr. Mayer is obviously the expert here, so.
Yeah, Francesca is taking notes, but we'll also, first of all, let's start. It's about storytelling, right? So, what's the introduction? Maybe we can have the round, and maybe we should introduce yourself as well. Please go ahead.
My name is Mark Anthony Manuel. I'm from the Philippines. Interestingly, this is the first time that I came to know about West Papua.
Yeah.
My apologies because you're from West Papua. Because I thought then that Papua only pertains to the Papua New Guinea, which is the eastern part of the Papua Islands. Is that an island?
Yeah, it's an island, right? It's, in fact, it's the second largest island of the world, New Guinea, and it has been cut in 2 halves in the early 1900s. So, there was an agreement between the Netherlands and Indonesia, so Papua people were involved in that. And in that agreement, it was decided that there should be a referendum, or like this visit.
religions, and sexual orientation. Thank you. Yeah.
Maybe someone wants to compliment.
Well, I cannot understand, but basically, we talked about the fact that that how different. Yeah, we talked about how education, like we talked about education and how the indigenous people, they have different type of educational system than what we are used to here in Global South. And we talked about that they like when they come to like our way of understanding, we may feel that they don't know something or they're not as educated as we are, but the reality is that they just have different type of education. They have their own way of living, and they, by the storytelling or by just showing them like how to do things, they get educated by just living their life that way. And it's not like reading a book or having a textbook or anything like that. It's just their own way of living. And okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
We talked about research and how intersectionality was going to fit into our research. We spoke specifically about land dispossession. Could you tell us a bit about the ways that using intersectionality in researching land dispossession helps us see the whole picture?
I don't remember that part.
No, we didn't talk about that.
Sophia would have it.
Okay.
So we have it.
Okay, so what we discussed is that a lot of the times, based on gender as well, I think that's what you mean. Yeah, land dispossession can take place and can affect a lot of different people in many different ways. And a lot of the times, for example, because of like families have to move and find a new place of living. They lose their livelihoods, they lose their culture, they lose their own communities and their own families. So land dispossession is a really big problem in West Papua and in other parts of the world as well. Land dispossession is related to intersectional research because
Worked a bit with gender, so
yeah.
the land dispossession is going to impact genders differently, but
Yes.
also all those different intersectionalities.
Yeah, we talked about what happens to indigenous people when they have to move to different places because they lose their original place of living. And we said that when they move to urban areas, the gender roles that they are used to may change, and sometimes what happens? Hello. Sometimes the role, like women may have to do jobs and that they were not originally used to in their own like community, and also men, they may not find a job or they may get discriminated, and that affects the families, and it affects also the men's mental health and like their way of living.
Okay, and then we also touched upon storytelling. And we discussed that a lot of the times, even though stories can be like really tragic, they can still have like a positive effect, and they can be also positive stories because by telling these stories, cultural identities can like remain and they can go through generations, and then communities and people can easily find peace as well. And it helps indigenous communities to preserve their own identities. And storytelling is quite a new way of research. but we think it's really important to keep it going. And we also discussed like how reliable these sources can be. So the stories of like these people, well, they are authentic. So we think that even though we cannot put it in footnotes in research, they can still be important and they can affect research in really important ways. And lastly we discussed that storytelling can take many different ways. Simply telling stories, but also through music. So rituals, poems, and tales. So storytelling has a lot of different ways, and basically that's what we discussed in the group.
Is there anything? Anything additional that wasn't mentioned? That was super interesting, really. Good job. Yeah, that's it. Should we go to the next group?
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
I don't know if you discussed it, sorry, before you go. I don't know if you discussed it, but how do you see storytelling breaking the barrier between sort of traditional research and starting to change perceptions? And because, of course, it's got some important value, but perhaps people don't see that value just yet, especially compared to traditional research. So how do we break that barrier to, yeah?
Anyone wants to
Anybody?
take the floor?
Maybe someone else? Yeah.
I think we talked about it now too.
We were able to touch on that because I said we'll be having some problems with regard to footnoting if we deal with storytelling. And if this circumstances will be used as evidence in court, then there will be called hearsay.
Right.
So there is really a barrier which we must face for us to find a way on how to deal with these customs and traditions which are preserved by storytelling through poems, through music. Because like in the Philippines, we have music in different languages which tells the story of a particular group of persons.
I think also somebody said that we are not like was you tell us that we're not trying to like use storytelling as a main source. We said that we use it together with the human rights human rights framework that we already have. That's what we discussed, and also, and the point of human rights is that it's universal. So the point is that we broaden the application to those people that are not already heard, and it's not only focused on colonial mindset and this rigid way of thinking, that we broaden it and we understand that there's different type of ways that people tell the things that are happening to them, and we could find ways to find justice to those people. I think that's what we discussed.
Yeah, it's about co-creation. I think that's the essence. So it's not to replace existing research, but it's really to co-create. I think I said something about in the beginning that we need to create contact zones of expertise when scientific knowledge and traditional knowledge meets each other, and together we create solutions, because we need that. And then we need to create a system when we recognize that there are other ways of knowing, not just those scholar citation, but there are other ways of knowing things, which is equally valid than the scientific method.
In addition, in the Philippines we have inner rules, an expert opinion. Just like ma'am, if she will testify with regard to what happened in the situation in West Papua, and she's qualified as an expert witness, then the court can admit the testimony as an expert. And if an expert is presented, opinions can be admitted by the court and given relevance and weight.
That's exactly what we did with the Permanent People's Tribunal as well. There was a panel of expert judges that that discuss the testimonies and expert testimonies as well, so witnesses, victims, but also expert testimonies. And it validates, such a permanent people's tribunal validates the material that was brought to them, so those testimonies. And I think that's really important. Also, together with my, maybe on a positive note here, together with my organization, coordinating organizations for West Papua, we have now the initiative to launch a knowledge center, because there's already a lot of material out there of anthropologists or legal scholars, but it's all fragmented, and also sometimes from a wide perspective. So I think it's really important to bring that material together, so all this information in one place, so and that it also is open for everyone, and that it can be found more easily than it is today. So so on a positive note. But thank you so much.
That's an approach which would solve the citation part.
Yeah,
right? Because
definitely.
if there is a knowledge center which gathers the knowledge, then throughout the database of the knowledge center it can be footnoted.
Yeah, indeed.
Look, and we were all happy, we can keep us rolling.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Mark Anthony Manuel. I'm from the Philippines. I will discuss what we have tackled in our discussion earlier. First, unfortunately, this is the first time that we heard about the situation in West Papua in our group. So the first thing that we did is that we discussed what is really the situation. Because in every problem, you must first understand what is really happening. That's why we discussed what is really happening, what is the historical context. And we also discussed how intersectionality and storytelling can help. Because not all legal question can be answered by traditional way. Not all legal question can be answered by science. Sometimes it can be answered by the use of feelings, empathy. And this is why intersectionality and storytelling can help. We are in a different situations, not because in this situation we are trying to look for or find for an answer, which we are not involved personally. That's why our group suggested that we have to learn more from the people that will be personally be affected by the question or by the situation. First, we answer, what would West Papuan people say? What would West Papuan people say? This is to better understand what is the thing that, or what is the problem that we want to really solve. And sometimes, I also shared a problem of indigenous people in the Philippines, wherein there is a situation there that 80% of income coming from the land goes to a government organization, and only 20% goes to the indigenous people. And the first question that must be asked is, are you content with your situation? But there is a problem there because we were informed that foreign journalists are not allowed to enter West Papua. I'm not exactly sure of that, but the problem is about information. Do they have this solution, or do they really need this solution? Because sometimes, if they are content with the status quo, how we can help them, right? And about storytelling, we discuss how they can be involved, in policy making, and in discussions on how to solve their situation if there is really a situation to be solved. And we also discuss what are the alternative ways of communication, why this alternative way of communication is important. And we answer that there must be a recognition of what really is happening. And because knowledge is power. And not only knowledge, I think what is more important is empathy, because we have to feel what they are feeling so that we may look for an answer that is best suited to their situation. And then we also ask the question that what are the alternative ways of communication that can be used so that we can answer this question and we integrate intersectionality and storytelling in our research. Anyone from the group who wants to add?
To add on
To what I summarized.
Maybe they want to complement.
If you want to complement,
We also have to wrap up slowly. We got informed to wrap
I
up.
think in the end we came to the conclusion that if we look at it through international law, the situation in West Papua is that yes, what Indonesia is doing is not legal, and also the act of self-determination being determined by the bilateral treaty is also not legal. And how we get people to recognize this illegality is through storytelling, so it kind of does intersect with international law. Yes. That was it.
Thank you so much.
thank you for listening.
We need the screen for. Sorry. It's all a logistic, eh? Okay. Okay, so just in the meantime, it activates. Thank you so much for this really meaningful interaction. I was really impressed on how just in a couple of slides we can then have a really meaningful conversation and apply concrete tools to a situation that is real and really needs to be tackled. So we don't want to leave you hanging on, okay, so what's next? We learned all these tools and how can we apply them? So as part of United Rising, we have a team with an anthropologist, lawyers, and just really motivated activists that want to tackle this issue. We have a team that is called the Intersectionality team, actually, and we want to give you the chance to ask us questions, to interact further. We will make a small chat where we will invite anyone that is happy to discuss further on not just the scenario that we tackled today, but how can I apply these methodologies within my research. So you are able to scan this QR code, and basically it will ask you what is your name, and if you want to be part of our newsletter, which we have it every week, and that is Zofia now in charge of writing it, and every week we give really important updates on what we do and on just real life facts that are important to spread awareness on. And yes, you can drop your email if you want to be part of the newsletter or want to be part of the conversation. So here it is. We also have some flyers and some stickers. If you're happy to take them with you, we would really appreciate your support. It's really important. That's what we do, And thank you so much for this interaction, and I hope to hear from you definitely.